So it's lesson 4. We've done a simple express example, but we want to start to work with the generator now. So this project, this little sample that we've been kind of just building these individual node files for the last 4 weeks, we're kind of done with it now. We want to build a new project and use the express generator so we can see how the generator works, how it scaffolds out an MVC structure, and then we can also start to play around with handlebars, our view engine that you guys are going to use in assignment 1. So I'm going to close up my project. Actually, I guess I'll just push it up to GitHub while I'm at it. So in my terminal, I want to get out, I'm inside my Winter 21 project. In order to use the generator, I want to be inside this existing project. I want to just be back in my root node folder. So I'm going to go up 1 level back to my node folder. So I'm just going to run the command cd and ... So now I'm back in my node folder. So run that command in your terminal. And maybe we'll take a minute. So what we're going to do is over the next few weeks, we're going to build a CRUD application using Node, Express, eventually MongoDB, and then we're going to add authentication to it as well. So I'm open to suggestions. Last semester in our ASP.NET class that most of you are in, last semester we built a little video game kind of library. I'm open to suggestions as to what you might like to build. I have a couple of ideas of what we could build, but I'm open to suggestions. We could do music, okay. We did do music in our PHP class, but okay. Any other suggestions? We could do movies, yep. We could do holidays, right? In honor of Hung celebrating, along with most of East Asia, celebrating Lunar New Year. We could keep track of holidays from around the world, right? We're a very international, diverse class. So we could share the different holidays, some of the different holidays from all the different cultures that make up our class. Okay, could be, Maria, no, it doesn't have to be a shop. Basically anything where we can kind of add, edit, and delete and read in it just to interact with the database. So you could put a preference in the chat. So we've got music, we've got movies, we've got holidays, we've got Mars landings. Let me know what your preference is. I mean, I could open up a poll or you could just tell me in the chat. Okay, social media, cryptocurrency, some really clever ideas. So give me your ideas. We'll figure out what we're going to do. I guess we could also build a little project tracker so that you could record all of your assignments and when they're due. If that might be a helpful thing. Could be an issue tracker. Okay, Rachel, you like that, and Maggie like that idea. I mean, it doesn't have to be my idea. I'm just trying to think of something that will be, yep, so kind of like our own version of that. I'm not familiar with that, Justin, but I can imagine kind of what that is. Yep, you could use it for inside or outside of school. Yeah, if you've got projects. Okay, well, maybe if there are no big objections. I mean, I like to try to give you things that are either, sort of culturally relevant for everybody, or better, particularly useful. So maybe we'll build a little project, assignment tracker, so you can keep track of your assignments and when they're due. And we can use our Node, Express, MongoDB infrastructure for this. Okay, so before we can build a project with the Express generator, we need to install it globally. So we want to use this command, npm I for install, -g for global, and we want the npm package called express-generator. So in your terminal, make sure you're out of the Winter 21 project. We should just be in your root node folder, because the generator will build a project folder for us. So I'm going to run the command I just put in the chat, npm I -g express generator. So let's install that. Okay, it says there are a few moderate security issues. We could try to run this command. I'll maybe do this. It might fix things, it might not. I can run the command npm audit fix. You're probably getting the same message. So I'm going to run that command as well, see if it cleans anything up. So I'll try this npm audit fix. This may not fix anything, but we'll give it a shot. This may update some old dependencies that have a known security flaw. Not really the end of the world. Okay, good. So it did clean up some stuff, and now 0 vulnerabilities. So that's good. So now we want to use the generator to build a new project. So we're going to run the command express. So it's going to build a new project using Express. And now we give our project a name. So I'll call it Express Project Tracker. And then we want to set our view engine as Hbs. I'll put this command in the chat as well. Sorry, whoops. It's minus view. There's 2 minus signs. So Express, Project Tracker, minus view equals Hbs. So when I run that command, it creates the Project Tracker folder along with public, JavaScript's images and style sheets. It creates a default CSS file. It creates roots, which are our controllers, views, and 3 views that have Hbs extensions. It gives me app.js and package.json and a bin. So if I go into my node folder, we can actually see, here's our kind of scaffolded application, but there's a couple more commands we're being asked to run. So it wants us to change directories, so go into our new Project Tracker folder, and then it wants us to run npm install or npm I. So this will add all the dependencies that Express needs. Okay, Justin, can you be a little more specific? Saying didn't work doesn't give me much to go on. If there's an error message, maybe you could throw it in the chat, please. So now I'll run cd project tracker. I'm just going to follow the instructions here. cd project tracker. And then it wants me to run npm install or npm I. For short, I and install do the same thing. So I'm inside my project tracker now, and now I'm going to install the dependencies that the Express generator needs. So these 3 steps you're going to need to do in your assignment. You're going to use Express to build a project that uses HBS. Then you're going to go into the project directory and run npm install. Now, when I do this, it says there are 4 vulnerabilities, and one of them is high and one is moderate. So again, it wants me to run, it's advising us what to do. To fix all issues, run npm audit fix -- force. So I'm going to try this command. npm audit fix -- force. We'll see if this fixes any of these vulnerabilities. Excuse me. Okay, so it's updated and now it says 0 vulnerabilities. Okay, so Barak, in front of the G, it has to be minus. So it should be, the command is right here. For installing the generator, npm I -g express -generator. Invalid tag name. Okay, it looks, so try typing it rather than copying it. There may have been an invisible character in there when you copied and pasted it somehow. Try typing it. I don't think a space should matter. Complaining about no package.json file. Justin, when you installed the generator, it complained about no package.json file? Okay, good, Barak. Justin, did you get the error installing the generator? Okay, again, try it again. Try the command again, Justin, and actually type the command. Don't copy and paste it. So we won't have to install the generator again. Yes, Nick, it should be public roots and views. So inside your folder should look like this. Justin, I'm not sure why that is, but it may not matter. As long as it installed, should be okay. So I'm going to now open up our new project in my code editor. And we'll work with this project for a while until we get into Angular. We're going to use this same project. So I'll go to Node, and here is our, I'll just refresh, and here's my project tracker. Okay, then the Express generator didn't install properly. Justin, are you on a Mac? No, you're on Windows. Okay, try running the generator install again, please. So let's have a look at what we got. We get a bin folder. This is where our compiled file goes. And this is where I've said all along that it uses a default port of 3000. So Express automatically uses port 3000 if no other port is specified. We don't have to touch this file. Okay, Justin, I may have to help you debug it after. I may need you to screen share. So I am recording this, so you may have to catch up after class. Without seeing it, I don't know why it isn't working. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Here are all the dependencies that the generator uses, so various utilities. We've got our public folder. These things are fairly self-explanatory. So an empty images and JavaScript and a base style sheet, which obviously we can change. Our roots, we have two controllers. So here's our index, our kind of default controller. Kind of looks similar to what we saw before. We're linking to Express. It's using Express routing, and right now it's mapping any GET requests at this URL. What it's doing is loading the view called index and passing in a title to the view. We'll talk about this after this exports. We've got a user's controller that just kind of sends an HTML response right now. Then we have our three Hbs views. So Barak, you mentioned this was like our homepage. You mentioned index.hbs. So here's the home page. We've got a layout page that already includes our style sheet. It injects our page body here, injects our page title here, and then we have a default error page. So here's the question. Why do you suppose this syntax? Nope. I'll explain in a minute how we do it, Nick. Good question. We don't load the views directly because remember we're using MVC. So we'll look at the pattern and we'll launch it and see the pattern and routing in 1 second. So our templates, they have Hbs extensions. So Hbs is short for handlebars. Why do you suppose this syntax is called handlebars? Angular uses similar syntax. Where do you think the name handlebars comes from?
So it's like one tag, and then we put the objects, like the like we have the one tag on the HTML, and then we have the whole object like in JavaScript, and then we put it in the
exactly tag. So because these tags, yes, it's also known as mustache syntax, right? Because the curly brackets that go around our server-side values, they look like handlebars we could grab onto, or like mustaches. That's the other name for the syntax, is mustache. So unlike in ASP.NET, right, its syntax is called razor. What character did we use in ASP.NET to represent a server-side value? So in handlebars, we use double curly braces. What did we use in ASP.NET? In front of a server variable. Nope, that was in PHP hung. We used a $sign. What about in an ASP.NET view? Right, Maggie, we use the @ symbol. Barak, you got it. So this is the equivalent in handlebars. And we'll look a little bit more at this in a bit. So Nick, I want to come back to your question. Our main file is app.js. So this is like our application kind of configuration and startup. So all our global dependencies are here. So it includes things for like parsing a cookie. And here's where the URLs are mapped. So our index router, this is our controller in routes. I'm going to rename this. So any requests that come in at the root are sent to the index controller. And the index controller is this file, root index.js. So when we get a request at the root, it loads our index view here and also passes in a variable for the page title. So we don't load the HBS files directly. Our app.js maps each root. So if our URL starts with /users, it's handled by the user's router or user's controller instead. Nick, does that kind of answer your question? I like where you were going with it. So we don't call the views directly. Each URL is mapped to a controller, and inside the controller, each method will call a different view. So kind of, it actually is the same in ASP.NET. And then we have our package.json file, which we're kind of familiar with. So to start this up, we can just go to the terminal and we can just run the nodemon command. And it's going to start by loading the compiled code in our bin folder. So I'm just going to type nodemon. Starts watching our project. We've got it green, so it's running. So now to try it out, we can just go to localhost 3000. This calls the index controller. So our app.js, any requests in the root are mapped to the index router. I'm going to rename this. I hate the name router. Which calls our index controller, which loads the view called index and also passes in a variable called title. And in index.js, the title value is printed out twice in this handlebar, inside these handlebar braces. Once in an H1 tag and then again in the paragraph tag. Right, so it says welcome to, it says express here, and then we're repeating it here. So you can sort of see the MVC pattern. App takes the URL, points it to a controller. The controller takes a particular URL and loads a particular view. And it might pass data to that view. In this case, it's passing just a string called title, which is being rendered in these handlebar tags. It'll get blocked. When you try to run, so Hung, if you don't stop the server in the terminal, the port is locked. If you then try to open another project and run it, it'll say the port's in use. And if that happens, you have to then go, if you're in Windows, to your task manager and stop the node process. So if I go to task manager here, under processes, background processes, oh, that's interesting. I would have expected Node.js to be here. Where is it? I'm not even sure where it is. I'm surprised it's not here. Unless I've missed it. Man, I have a lot of crap running on my computer. Should be in my list. I'm not sure why it isn't. I don't think it's under services. I'll have to come back with an answer for that one. But yes, you will get a message saying the port is in use. So I want to make start playing around, and let's make some changes to this. The first thing I want to change, one thing I can't stand about the Express generator, is that it calls this folder roots, which is a terrible name. If you want to keep that, these are not roots, these are controllers. So I am going to rename my folder from roots to controllers. So I'm going to right click the folder. If you're not using NodeMon, you would use npm start. But that means you've got to stop the server to see any changes. No changes will update until you stop and restart. So NodeMon will save you that step. So I'm going to rename. So I'm going to right click roots, and I'm going to choose refactor and rename. When I pick refactor, WebStorm is going to give me the option to change all the instances. Any code that's pointing to the roots folder, I can rename it. So I'm going to rename it, rename the directory and its usages, and I'm going to search for references and comments. I'm going to call it, just like in ASP.NET, I prefer the word controllers because we are using the MVC pattern. It's not called MRC, model root view. Sorry, it's not called MVR, model view root. It's called model view controller. So I'm going to refactor and rename this to controllers, which I think is a better name. I'm going to do the same thing here. Notice on lines 7 and 8, as well as 22 and 23, it calls these routers. These aren't routers, they're controllers, so I'm going to rename them. Both on lines 7 and 8, as well as on line . Again, you don't have to do this, but I think it's a lot more clear to me where the controllers are if I call them controllers, not routes. To me, routes is about URL patterns. That's a route. Localhost / users is a route. I like to think of controller as our logic file that takes a route on a request and then it sends some kind of response. 22, 23, Maria. So my top 2 lines and down here as well. Again, this is optional. You don't have to rename these if you don't want to. So we've actually got, so NodeMon will restart. So we can go to localhost 3000. I could also go to localhost 3000 / users. So right now we get this. If we wanted to change this, how could we change? Let's say we want to change the message here. Where would we go in our project to change the message that gets displayed at localhost 3000 / users? Which file in the project? Right, so we go to our users controller, and when we get a request in the root of users, right, we could say response from root of users controller. So if I save this response on line 6, thank you, Barak and Maggie. Right? Now we get a different message. So we've modified the response that comes back. This isn't loading a view. We don't typically do this. This is just sending a plain text response for now. So let's play around with this a little bit more. Okay, here's our next challenge. Here's your next challenge. On our home page, I want you to change this. So instead of the heading saying Express and Welcome to Express, I want this instead, wherever it says Express, this should say Project Tracker. So see if you can make that update in your project. So both the H1 and in the paragraph, it says Project Tracker instead. If you get it to work, then let me know in the chat where you had to go to make that change. It should also update the page title. Okay, so you went to your index controller. Yep, excellent. Hung So Young, Maggie, you've got it. So I'll go to my index controller. And if I change the title value here from Express to Project Tracker, once I save and go back, right, it updates in all three places. It updates in the title, it updates in the H1, and in the paragraph. So this title variable, it's output in three places. It's output in our layout file in the title tag, and then it's output in both the H1 and the paragraph. I'm going to go back to my index controller for a second. What will happen if I do this? So before, I was passing title all lowercase. What if we pass title with a capital T? Is my page still going to say Project Tracker? What do you think? Maggie, you think it'll give us an error? Not respond? Let's give it a shot. So doesn't show up in this case, right? It doesn't throw an error, but the value gets ignored if that variable doesn't exist. Now, we can pass actually, we'll leave this here. This line is really important. We're going to make a comment down here. So here we'll maybe add a few comments. So use express dependency and its routing feature to parse URLs. Anybody have any idea what's happening down here? What is this module.exports equals router? What's going on there? Export is an important keyword when we're working with Node. If you're not sure what it means, try commenting it out and see what happens to your application. what happens if you disable line 10? Okay, so Radia, you're saying we don't have to use it in every page. No, so Mag, you're saying it exports the structure and the view fills in the blanks. Yeah, you're on the right track. Right, so I save, but notice it actually crashes right away. So what's happening here? As soon as we commented the export, our app dies. So router.use, this line here, when it tries to use this, it now dies. So what do you suppose, what is exports doing? We're going to see this a lot in Node. Export has to do with the, you're getting warm, Hung, it has to do with visibility. If we comment out this line, what's it doing with our controller code in terms of the visibility of this controller to the rest of the application? Right, it hides it. So exports makes a file public. It's like a public declaration of a class in ASP.NET. In JavaScript, we don't use the keyword public, but that's what it's doing. Yeah, it's showing the controller so other parts of the application can see it and access it. So without exporting the file, it's not visible to the rest of the project. So it needs to be exported. And we'll see it here in our user's controller. So whenever you make a controller or a model, you need to export it to make it public. I can almost guarantee you that will be a quiz question on the next time we have a review quiz, is what does exports do in a Node app? Makes a file public. So the other files in the application can see it and call it. So as soon as we put this back, we're running. All right, it's 1:50. So I would like to take a pause here. When we come back, what I want to do, I just want to play around a bit more with passing data to views and also looking at how do we create new views and then map new URLs to those new views. So we'll do a little more in playing with the control. We're not going to get into the models today. We will next week when we start working with MongoDB. But I just want to get a little more comfortable with how the routing, the controllers, and the views all work together when we're using the Express generator. Okay, so let's take a break here, and we will come back in 10 minutes. Yep, totally, not silly at all. You can call the project whatever you like, no problem.